more seconds and then we'll get going. Just a reminder, we've got all of the presentation up in English et aussi en français. C'est disponible sur le site du web de boxecanada.org. Toute la présentation aujourd'hui va être en anglais, mais s'il y a des questions, pose-les en français and I will do my best to answer them.
Good.
It's important that I practice. Tommy, you look even more tanned when you're out in the sun, dude. Okay. So we had our first one of these meetings yesterday evening, and our intention is to have them come up probably 4 times a year, where it's just an opportunity for any of our members, but specifically people within the officiating community, to get a download of information, to pose questions. And I suspect most of the questions that we'll get, because I'm trying to keep things tight, we'll probably answer offline, or we may not have answers for you, but we'll certainly try to get them out. The presentation that is up in English and French will stay up on the officials website, and we'll have a recording of the meeting available as well, just so that we keep a record of this communication, and we make sure that if people are looking for answers, there are places for them to go if they're looking. And on that, we will get started. So I want to point out a few updates to our website. So specifically, we've been working slowly on the officials page. Included there, we've now got a wonderful video that is highlighting the work that Tom Daly, who's an official from out east, has done. He's actually one of our Hall of Fame members, and this was a news crew that came in, and it struck me when I watched the video that he so clearly encapsulated what being a referee and judge around the boxing community means. I think it's wonderful. And if you have any contact with a member of Boxing Canada or your clubs who is interested in becoming an official, I think that's a great starting point for them to go and watch that. It's like 2 or 3 minutes long. It's wonderful. We've also got our pathway with so the progression of each of the levels 1 through 4, and then as much information as we currently have right now around international. And we've got information on sort of various documents and forms that are coming up, some information on the National Officials Committee, which got started last year, and I've started putting together some information on the ring doctors. I also want to highlight that we've got a new culture section on our website, and I'm actually going to bring that here. So this is the front page. So when we're looking to get to officials, it's through here. And so it looks like it's slowly loading the video here, but there we go. So that video about why becoming an official, all the information about our pathway that we've got so far, that documents and forms, copies of the rule books that we're currently operating under, and then our National Officials Committee information, and then some of that ring doctor information. That ring doctor information, I think, is particularly important because I keep hearing feedback from the provinces that it's very difficult to find ring doctors. And when we find someone who might be interested, we want to give them a good resource. Now, that role of a ringside doctor happens to be an older AIBA document, but I think it's quite thorough. It does a good job explaining what happens at the highest end. And then certainly as a high level official, you can help that new ring doctor sort of focus themselves a little bit. I also want to point out that we've now got a section of streaming links available off our website. That is available here. And what we're trying to do is, for any competitions that are happening in Canada we're going to start just compiling a big list. Because if we can provide an opportunity for people to see more boxing, and specifically more Olympic style Canadian boxing, we want to be doing that. But also if there are streaming links that we may be able to provide our organizing committees with a few cents here, a few dollars here of additional revenue, then why not, right? So just a nice thing to do for the community. And then we have a section now on para and adaptive boxing. Now this is being slowly built out. It's right here. But we've got a fairly active para committee going right now. And we are happy to say that there will be a fairly, well, in para terms anyway, a large competition going on in BC. I believe it's coming up in September. I don't know if anyone on the call has any more information on that, but I'm checking in with the committee later today. And we are going to, fingers crossed, at least open up a category for para boxing at the Sarnia 2024 Elite Championships going on this year in November. I don't know whether we'll get anyone. It will be a novice level event because, you know, not a whole lot of para boxing going on. So that all those athletes would qualify as novices as opposed to open. And we will be pushing really hard to have a para category attached to our 2025 National Elite Championships, which have been awarded to Winnipeg. So that'll be late November 2025. So fingers crossed that we're moving in the right direction there. As we are building out sort of resources, they will be up on this page. And in particular for you guys, we are looking to build out some information for officials. We don't have a whole lot there yet, but like I said, we're trying to put together some resources, and you know, certainly we'll have information available as it becomes ready to share. Okay, one slide down. Looking specifically at our officials development pathway. So this is a simplified version of what's on the website currently. It really is just highlighting that we've got this is all information that you guys know. Level 1, 2, 3, the ring supervisor course, we're going to talk about in a minute. It's currently being put together and it's going to be ready for piloting shortly. It's the provincial officials, the provincial head officials, who are really responsible for the management of the level 1, 2, 3. And actually, I need to make a change here. We've got this as National Officials Committee, who will be sort of a gatekeeper on that program. But like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that. My hope is that on the version that's on the website, we will eventually have any of the resources that are needed in order to put on any of the clinics available and hosted on the website, right? Now, nothing that, you know, needs to be kept secret is going to give away answers or anything is going to be posted, obviously. But if it's just information on, you know, how to officiate, how to be a good ref, how to be a good official at various levels, I really think this is something that we can share. You know, it's been more than a year that I've been in this role, and it's actually really hard to come by this information. It's being held right now out with the people who are putting on the courses, and that's great. But we want to make sure that it's available to as many people as possible and as widely as possible. And that way we can see what, you know, great clinic facilitators are doing and build off of those great things and share those experiences. Because obviously, you know, having good quality officials available for our competitions is key to boxing success going forward. A quick touch on the international levels. So we actually had Ed on the call last night. He'd been involved in the PBU. We had the Paris boxing unit, sorry. We had 4 officials who were involved in the PBU. So it was Ed, Jennifer, Wade, and Jeff Verhoeven. Obviously, Wade and Jeff were at the Olympics, and they had a very successful time at the Olympics. I think both of them had were involved in 3 of the finals, which by my count, and I wasn't doing all that great a job counting, puts them up at like having the heaviest load of any of the officials who were there. So congratulations to both of them. But the international standards that have come back from World Boxing have said that anyone who is involved in the PBU will have a written test that they will do, and as sort of a confirmation that their old IBA qualifications will just turn over into whatever the new system is. And then we will have a process for new international officials or officials who weren't involved in the PBU that World Boxing is working on. And I know they sent out a bunch of information that was passed on to you guys. We don't, I mean, the Olympics were a big deal. I think it slowed everyone down a little bit over the summer. But we should hear from World Boxing in the next couple of months about what the next steps on that process will be. And yeah, Frank.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. In the meetings that the World Boxing had with the officials, there was one, I think it was about a month ago that I was in. That, like you said, there's going to be everybody that registered from around the world submitted their form and what they had done in the past. From there, they were going to pick those officials that were going to do the 25 question questionnaire, like you indicated, Chris. And then the ones afterwards that weren't in that selection will do the normal testing process. So that's what was said in the meeting with everybody. And sometime after the Olympics, they were going to notify everybody on that had put their names forward on what was going on. But perhaps Jeff Verhoeven has a little bit more to add to that. Or not.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm here. I don't have much more to add to Frank said. That's almost exactly what I heard. The next step should happen here in the next couple of weeks, is last I heard.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. And again, I think you just missed out on my congratulations to you and to Wade on the fantastic job that you guys did out at the games. We're very much looking forward to having you share some of those experiences in a both informally and formally. Fingers crossed that we can get you and Wade out to Sarnia in order to sort of enlighten all of us about all of the amazing things that you learned while there, and maybe some of the less amazing things. But it certainly would have been quite an experience. So thank you on behalf of everyone at Boxe Canada. Okay, on that, we will move on to concussion awareness. So we have been dealing with a number of provinces who now have like proper legal legislation that have come in around concussion education and awareness with regard to sport. Certainly Ontario has been leading the way on this, but a number of other provinces are quickly catching up and putting in legislation that requires concussion education. So it isn't necessarily required for officials. However, being proactive about this stuff and making sure that we've got all our documentation in line to make sure that we can protect the very safe environment that we create around boxing and you guys enforce around boxing is super important. So the officials committee sort of gave the thumbs up that we are going to, for 2025, make the quote Making Headway in Sport course that's available through the Coaching Association of Canada mandatory for level 2 officials and greater. For the remainder of 2024, we certainly recommend that any and all officials go and take that course. It is free. It's completely online. You can do it anytime you want. And if you are not already engaged in the coach development process and don't have sort of an NCCP ID number, that's required to get in order to do the course. It's super easy. It doesn't cost you anything. You just give them a few details. You know, they do the validation. They send an email to you to make sure it's actually you signing up, and then you're good to go. So I think this is something that we're pushing pretty hard on. We're also revising the minimum requirements around concussion education for all of our coaches. So for some reason, we started the requirement for having making headway in sport as part of the curriculum at our competition development level, the replacement for the old level 3 program. And we are now pushing that down for 2025 all the way to our lowest level of coaching, which is the instruction beginner level. So every coach going through Boxe Canada program starting in 2025 will be required to do that course as well. So just wanted a heads up on that. So you guys aren't the only ones who are being asked to do it. And we've got, you know, a fair amount of time to get everyone on board. So if anyone
With
has
that,
any difficulties with that course, you just let me know and I can help sort things out. Go ahead, Frank.
Chris, though, we got to be looking at, there is provinces that don't have any requirements for their coaches working the corners, except to be registered as a coach. To make this program successful, then provinces are going to have something that says to work a corner, you have to be minimum intro beginner certified, or else this won't work at all. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
and we're pushing provinces who are reticent around that, but we've now got 3 provinces online who are actually going above the national standard, which is pretty weak right now, right? It's like 1 coach out of anyone who's in the corner needs to be certified at any level. And I know Alberta has gone in actually quite aggressively, so congratulations, Alberta, to say, you know, if you are going to work as a coach, it starts at certified, and that's it, right? Like no training areas, no nothing. You're either, if you're not certified, you're a spectator. So
Yeah, and I think New Brunswick has done that as well. In talking to Eddie, I know they implemented that as well.
yeah.
So
Jeff Lalji. Sorry, Jeff, I thought I saw your hand up there. Let me see if I can unmute you. I can only ask you to unmute. No, we're still not getting you. Oh,
Is
there
that
we go.
better? Yeah, so I was just saying, with the officials in the corner, how are we policing that? I mean the coaches in the corners, how are we policing whether they've taken their courses or are certified to be there?
So
you can do it. You can do it for your province, because your executive director or your director of coaches should have access to the NCC program, and they'll have access for every coach on what their exact certification is. And then you could print out a list of your coaches that are registered in your province, and you can have exactly what level they're certified at, Jeff. Sorry,
yeah,
Chris. That's a question that I've been fielding a lot lately.
yeah, we're actually going a step beyond that, because we want to make it as easy on you guys as possible. So we are going to proactively in 2025 start, instead of just the little wallet card going out to coaches, we're going to actually make what I would call like a lanyard sized card. And on that lanyard sized card, it will have at the time of their registration their current status within the coaching system. So are they, let's say, an intro to competition trained, or are they certified, or are they in training? And that card is also going to have notification as to whether they have successfully completed one of the what I'm calling the 4 safe sport-ish courses. So there's the Respect in Sport for Activity Leaders course. There's the Make Ethical Decisions online course offered through Coaching Association of Canada. There's the Safe Sport course that's available through Coaching Association of Canada. And we've added in the Have They Done the Make Headway in Sport course. Every time that a coach upgrades their coaching status, which would be essentially by completing the evaluation portion of that program, we see that at the national office, and we are going to send them directly an updated copy of that card. So my fingers are crossed that we will be able to essentially require coaches when they're walking into a competition to have that card on a lanyard available so that it's available for everyone to see. Should be, if this works, should be super easy. We'll see how it goes. We're going to pilot this for all the coaches who are showing up to Sarnia 2024 for nationals. So they will all get an early version of that card because we're producing it based off of our new member registration system plus integration into the CAC database. So like I said, fingers crossed this should work out, but it should be really obvious what everyone's level of certification is. And of course, because coaches are coaches, we have a way for them to order a replacement card if they lose theirs. So and you could always just do a backup. Like there's as Frank said, you can go through your executive director. They can find out what people's levels are. There's also a public portal that you can go through in order to check some very basic information on what a coach's status is. Now, I don't think you guys as officials want to literally be sitting there and typing in people's stuff. But we've actually put on the draft version of those cards a QR code. In fact, there's 2 QR codes, one that takes the someone with a phone to the public terminal to validate whether that card is actually correct or not. And there's a QR code that will allow the coach to be able to bring up their own record that has more personal information on it than you'd want to share publicly. But if they need to prove to someone right away that they have say they just got certified, right, but they haven't received their new card yet, they would be able to pull up their phone and be able to show you, yes, look, I'm now certified at this level. It's even though I haven't got my new card yet. So we're trying to make it as easy on coaches and you guys as possible to be able to enforce any minimum standards that provinces want to put in. Okay, good questions. A little bit on the supervisor course. So there's a subcommittee that's working on this right now. They're just about finished everything. They're targeting a pilot for this fall. It's really designed for level 3 officials and up. And we will be running them by the NSO as needed, but we're going to budget to run 2 to 3 per year. I haven't got a huge briefing yet on does that look like it's all online? Like, is it a Zoom course? Is it a hands-off, do it on your own course? I don't think it is. Or does it need to be done in person? I know that there is a mentorship component to it. So new ring supervisors will be paired up with existing experienced ring supervisors in order to get sort of signed off on all the different areas that they need to be aware of. But really the goal of this course is to ensure that we've got consistency and uniformity across each of our provinces, because what we don't want to have is accidentally providing surprises for coaches and athletes and officials who've been working in their one province and then, they go out of province and they see something that looks different. I'm not sure that we're going to see massive differences in anything, but we just want to be aware of what sort of the minimum standards actually are. and be cognizant of when we're going above those minimum standards. So, like I said, we should have that targeted or available for piloting this fall, and there will be the officials committee will do an email out to each of the chief provincial officials to say, you know, who do you have who might be interested in taking this? I suspect we'll probably get between 8 and 12 candidates for that initial pilot. And then, like I said, we'll do them a few times a year, or schedule them to happen a few times a year in order to make sure that we're meeting all the demand that we have. Looking at officiating outside of Canada. So we have an existing policy that is geared towards athletes and coaches who are traveling outside of Canada. And this sort of came about, to the best of my knowledge, really around the whole COVID thing, and making sure that people were vaccinated and able to travel. But other nations, I mean, particularly the States, but also a number of other nations, have found that the international travel, what I'm now calling a pass as opposed to a permit, was really handy, because they would be able to guarantee that a coach or an athlete who showed up at one of their competitions was known to Boxing Canada, and you could make an assumption that they had a certain minimum level of competency when they were traveling. So the officials committee has asked that we sort of expand that out to also include officials. And we have revised the actual form. It used to be just a PDF that you would fill in, and for some computers it was really easy. For others, people would print them out and then scroll out on by hand, and then take a picture and send that JPEG to us. And that was all good for the purposes of having the permit available, but it made record keeping on that really, really difficult and laborious. So what we've done is we've switched that into a format where you can fill everything in a spreadsheet, and it automatically generates your actual permit, and it puts everything in a format where we can actually keep stats. So I know that from an athlete development point of view, and even coach development point of view, we're looking at questions like, at what age are we starting to see athletes travel outside the country? At what age are they going overseas versus just across the border down to the States? What is the normal group size? Who are the provinces and clubs who are most active going outside of the country versus staying inside the country? We now have a way to actually track that, and we will be providing the provinces information back about what we're seeing. So we're looking forward to being able to use that when we've got questions around athlete and coach development. And certainly by adding in officials onto that, it will also give us an idea of which officials are traveling, what level are those officials when they travel, and, you know, do we have maybe opportunities to create more solid relationships with some of our fellow nations, and, you know, and get into a more regular sharing of officials back and forth. So we're looking forward to that. That document is available on the officials page and in the documents and resources section of our website. Frank.
Chris, sorry to be the one asking all the questions, but
yeah, it's all good.
Right now, when we're doing border states, so in other words, if Saskatchewan's going to like North Dakota, that's just done with the province because it's a border state. Are we, just to make sure that we have proper stats, are we looking at every border we cross? We're going to go through Boxe Canada then, so that we do have stats, so it won't be just a provincial thing anymore?
So that's an excellent question. And that's one of the reasons why I've changed the name to an international travel pass. We don't, the board is looking right now at the actual policy and kind of feeling like we don't actually need the policy. When we've talked to particularly the US, they're not all that interested in the COVID stuff anymore. What they want to see is a tool to make sure that we can guarantee that someone is a member of Boxe Canada, because it has an impact on their insurance. And certainly when we travel overseas, thinking back to phone calls that I get from Ireland, one from England, one from Thailand, that they appreciated that we actually had the member registration information and that they could quickly validate that people were legitimate members.
Okay, then
I would, yeah, so
I'll
I would
talk
like
to you.
to see, sorry, I was getting to the answer here. I
Sorry.
would like to see everyone doing this. This is not mandatory, right?
Well,
We can't
it
keep
is.
anyone from doing
No.
this, but I will tell you, if you don't have your name on one of these forms going down to the States, you will probably be not able to participate.
Yeah, but the thing is too, it's in the rule book. There's a portion on traveling. So I just want to make sure, as Jeff and I are trying to get this completed to present to the committee and stuff like that, there is a section on that. I just want to make sure that we've got the wording, and I can touch base with you afterwards on that.
Yeah, once we've
I
got
want to
that.
make sure our wording is correct on that before we send the draft to the RJ committee. No, you and I can take that offline. Thanks a lot, Chris. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, speaking of rule books, looking to the World Boxing Rulebook. So we've got the current World Boxing Rulebook up on both the officials page and in the documents and resources section of the website. I've had some of our interns, so national team athletes who didn't have a lot to do during the games, if they weren't overseas. They've been going through the provincial websites and sort of trying to highlight where we've seen references to IBA and AIBA. And we really need those updated. So there will be a formal request going out to each of the provinces. We may have already sent it actually, to over the next couple months. Can you please take a look at what's actually written up on the website, because we would like to remove any of those references where we can, because of course we're no longer affiliated with those organizations. And the Canadian version of the rule book is currently being worked on. We expect that sometime this fall we'll get a final draft ready there. With the presentation of that new quote Canadian rule book, we're really going to work hard at making sure that there is both a commonality to any world boxing rules, but also even in formatting, that the formatting of the Canadian rulebook really looks like it interleaves nicely with the international rulebook that we're using. So there'll be two versions that we'll put out. One is a full rulebook that sort of incorporates those Canadian rules, and then we'll have sort of a shorter version and sort of a cheat sheet. What are all the things that make Canadian rules different from the world boxing rules?
Yeah, we're integrating the world boxing into our stuff and trying to keep that formatting and some of the wording the same, so that they mirror each other type idea. So it's not as so we're using a lot of the wording and a lot of the different things that they've implemented into ours as well. And we're trying to change that over, but really highlighting domestic rules obviously are going to be different, that they don't have anything to do with, but the intent is to have it parallel with their stuff so that the formatting is the same.
Yep, fantastic. Okay, and looking at abuse-free sport. So I've been getting a lot of questions lately, actually, about how does abuse-free sport relate to officials? And whenever I talk about abuse-free sport or safe sport or whatever the buzzword is, depending on who you're talking to, really what we're talking about with safe sport is don't be a jerk, right? It's difficult to actually write down on paper exactly, like, if you do this you're a jerk and if you do this you're not a jerk, but we kind of know it when we see it. And a lot of the the behaviors that we're looking at now in the safe sports system have actually, I don't want to say evolved from maltreatment from coaches towards athletes, because there's certainly always cases of that, unfortunately, that happen that we need to be dealing with. But we're starting to see safe sport cases coming up where it's actually abuse from an athlete directed to a coach or to officials, right? So I would, I don't want to use any hard examples here, but maybe in the theoretical case that someone didn't like a call that was made around who won a particular match, and that there was maybe a social media posting that went out by an athlete attacking one or more of the officials who were involved in that. That is a safe sport issue, right? And needs to be treated as though it's a safe sport issue. It doesn't mean that, you know, the weight of the world is going to come down on everyone in that case, but it needs to be attended to, because if we don't attend to it, then it's going to happen again and it's going to escalate, right? So I need everyone to be very cognizant when you're out working and educating more junior officials that we can't tolerate this stuff, right? And the interventions don't necessarily need to be going onto our website under the safe sports section and putting in you know, a formal report, but we got to step up and speak up and call people out for poor behavior when we hear it. And by doing that, I think we can nip a lot of these things quite quickly, and then we won't have escalation. And you know, I don't want to say too much, but like we had some very poor behavior by athletes at our U19 camp out in Victoria, which ultimately led to two of those athletes not being able to compete in the dual match that we had with Germany. And it was unfortunate that those athletes didn't get to compete, but we also had two athletes from Germany who then didn't get to compete, right? Who had come all the way over here for a camp. Like it really became quite a thing. So, you know, we need to be working hard on that. And I encourage every official to go and look at some of the sort of safe sport trainings that are available. A lot of you guys will have gone through the Respect in Sport training, and it's a, you know, there's a cost associated with it. It's a high quality training, but we've now got a free version of that that is available through the Coaching Association of Canada, and it's literally called the Safe Sport Training. Really high quality and really focuses on very good sport specific examples of behaviors and remediations. Anyone who's been through the coaching program and has gotten certified, you'll have gone through the Make Ethical Decisions program. That is also excellent. And what I really like about those is they're pretty accessible. I mean, one of them is free, which is really good. But also it's really easy to track who has done those, because we see all of it through the locker system, that so the registration system through the Coaching Association. So it becomes very easy for us to look up who's actually safe sport trained and who isn't, right? The Respect in Sport training, if you're also a coach, it's easy to find, but if you're not also a coach, you know, we rely on those individuals to actually have a literal certificate in order to prove that they've done something. So not so easy for us to track. Speaking of tracking, we had last year sort of a pretty hawk together system for coaches, athletes, and officials to be able to sign on to the Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and address maltreatment in sport. It was sort of a Google form. It was fairly easy. It was just a tick box and you were done. The government has now gone and said, that's great. We're evolving the system. there is now one centralized database for people to sign up or pledge themselves to uphold the Universal Code of Conduct. We've got links to it available at boxingcanada.org safe sport. It is required for any top leaders in an NSO. So board of directors, committee members, working groups, staff, contractors, all of our national team athletes, any level 4 official or higher should do this, and you will need to do this if you're selected to work at one of our national championships. And it is a little bit of work, unfortunately. There's a 20-minute video. It's not one of those videos that you can like fast forward through, right? Like it's quite a gated system. But the one huge advantage of this is that you get to write down all of the sports that you're involved with. So for me, I'm a coach and I'm a board of directors for 5 or 6 different sports. So I can click off, I'm involved in boxing, boccia, canoe kayak, cross-country skiing, biathlon, and triathlon. And then it's done for all of those sports. So it's a little bit of work to do, but I think it's a pretty solid system. It feels very formal, which can put people off a little bit, but anyone who's selected, say, for Sarnia as an official, we will provide an opportunity during that week where anyone who hasn't yet done that can go and, we'll literally put up a computer for you and you can go through and do it. And if anyone has any questions about that, certainly send them those questions over to me. I'm happy to help out. Okay, seeing no questions on.
Just
Yep.
What is the recommendation then? Because there's usually about 2 or 3 coaches that always go on social media and cut down the officials because they didn't agree with the scores or thought they should have won or whatever. And it seems to be the same 2 or 3 coaches on a consistent basis doing that. And it just seems that it's just, in some cases, the comments made is, well, it's just that coach is blowing off steam or she's blowing off steam, which is fine and dandy to say that. But, and for somebody to turn around and say, well, officials need to grow some skin. How do we prevent that? Because to me, it's consistently happening with some of these people on social media. So is there going to be something in place that there is an avenue that says, okay, this if the province isn't doing anything about these coaches, because they're just saying, oh, that's too bad, grow some skin. Is there going to be an avenue, Chris, or something like a one-off is a one-off? It is what it is. They got mad and then they got talked to. Oh yeah, crap, I shouldn't have done that, right? But if it consistently happens, what is where does that protocol fit into that without hitting attack with a sledgehammer? A fact, right? Because I don't think we want to hit attack with a sledgehammer. But in the same vein, I don't think we're going to lose officials because they're going to say, you know what, I'm a volunteer. Like, screw this, I'm out. I can stay home.
Yeah, and my immediate suggestion is if you don't feel that this is up at the level that we want to do a formal intervention through our third-party investigation unit, and a lot of this stuff where it's kind of laughed off later that it's blowing off steam, but it keeps happening, I'm not sure that we actually want to commit resources, because there is a commitment of resources that's required there. But I want to hear about it and I will intervene. Suspensions of membership are remarkably easy to do. And I hate the idea of, you know, forcing someone to be the guinea pig and making an example of someone, but in any of the sports that I've worked with before, when we've had bad behavior by mostly athletes or coaches, and we intervene in a fair but stern way, we see the behavior change quite quickly, right? So I think we need to be ready to do that, and I am ready to do this, right? I don't want
Yeah, like I
any.
mean, there is the one-off, Chris, you know, and somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I guess, geez, I didn't realize that everybody was going to read that or whatever, blah blah blah." They learn from it, we move on, right? But there is again two or three that I notice that's always doing that, and I just don't think it's fair, especially to newer officials. I mean, it's hard enough getting officials, and then when we have people slamming them, um, and the province decides not to do anything about it, there needs to be that avenue.
Yeah, and I mean, for the one-off, I think an apology goes a long way, and a public apology for on social media goes a long way. But if we're talking about three necessary public apologies, because it happened, they apologized, and it happened, they apologized. No, now we're getting screwed, right? So at that point, like we will move in, and I'm happy to help provinces deal with these issues, right? Okay. Bon, good discussion there. Speaking of discussion, so trans athlete participation in boxing. So I'm this is going to feel like a bit of an abbreviated conversation, but I'm hoping, based on the feedback we had last night anyway, I'm hoping this provides some guidance. So if we have a trans athlete who wants to just do boxing and join a club, there is nothing preventing them from doing that. If they are interested in doing fitness and conditioning practices, not a problem. They can do that. I will take their membership money. If they're interested in sparring, assuming that they have done all the medical check and everything that they need to do, there is nothing keeping them from sparring, right? In the same way that we currently have men and women sparring against each other. We've got differences in weight from time to time sparring against each other in a controlled environment where we have the opportunity for people to opt in and opt themselves out. This is not a problem. The wrinkle comes in when it's competition, because with a competitive environment, of course, there's you don't know who you're going to be competing against, and you don't really have the freedom to back out of it, right? I mean, you can always back out of a bout, but that's like you're under duress at that point. So if a trans athlete wants to compete, they need to go through our transgender participation policy. It is quite extensive. It is not very prescriptive, because in reality, I think a lot of these cases are very different from each other. And when we look at the confusion that existed at the Paris Olympics around, is this even a transgender athlete, right? Like, our policy is designed to make sure that there is clarification on these issues. To date, we have had 0 applications to any trans athletes participating in boxing in Canada. And the way that the policy is set up, it will take around a year from someone engaging with the process at step 1 to finally getting an outcome that could be thumbs up, or in all likelihood will be thumbs down. And the reason why I say in all likelihood thumbs down is because we have made it clear the prioritization that we have is around safety, fairness, and then looking at participation is the same as we deal with every day with our boxers, right? We think about novice competition. We're always thinking about safety first, then we worry about the fairness of the bout, and then we have this goal of trying to get as many people doing boxing as possible. So the question that has come up a few times from officials is, what do we do if there's a surprise? And I sincerely believe that we are unlikely to have surprises, but if we do have a surprise, the answer is in the same as if we had a surprise entry into a novice category. If someone shows up and they don't have a record of boxing, they don't have a registered coach who's there with them, then they're not competing, right? And as officials, you guys are 100% covered to say, look, our priorities are safety, fairness, and participation. And right now, we can't guarantee this athlete's safety or the safety of an athlete who's in the ring with them, right? In the same way that I would hope you guys would stop a fight between me and Wyatt, because believe it or not, we're both in the same weight class. And if I ever got put into the ring with Wyatt, I would hope that, Marlo would step in immediately and keep me from getting myself beat to death. So you guys are 100, all of our officials are 100% covered to say, look, we have a concern about safety. We're going to not have you participate because of that. We understand there may be disappointment, but we have a policy. We need you to go through the policy. And once you've been through the policy, then you can come back. Okay. And quick notes on the Boxe Canada cultural projects that are going on. So we have moved, and I'm going to switch back over again to our website here for a second. So we've sort of rejigged things on the website. So we've now got a culture section. So Say Sport is in there. Our Find a Club system is in there that we've been updating. A link to all of our photo albums. And we've now got photos of each of our Olympic teams going back to 1920. And we've been trying to find other sort of photos from nationals and stuff that we're throwing in there to make sure that we're covering off, everything that we've done. We've been working hard on our Hall of Fame section of the website. And I'm just going to bring this up for a second because it is kind of a trove of information and we've got a lot of experience around this table right now. If you guys have an opportunity to go and look through any of these profiles and you see that we are missing information that you might have the ability to help with, I would love to hear from you because it is difficult for me to look at things like we put Mr. Orville Nash into our Hall of Fame, but we don't really know anything about him. Like there were no records kept. So if we can find that information and if you guys have any hints on information, that would be fantastic. Okay. Then if I go back, the other big thing that we've been putting in that I need this specific group's help with is we've been looking at what is the history of all the Canadians at the Olympics. So going back to 1920, we have reasonably good records about the athletes, but we have zero records on coaches and staff or Canadian officials. And once we get to sort of 48, we start having one or two references, but really anything before, well, let's say before Atlanta, right? Like I'm really looking for, can we fill in who are some of these officials? If you guys have any insight onto who the coaches were actually at these events, this is all great information and just stick it in an email and let me know, okay? Because we would really like to get a lot of this built out in a more meaningful way. I mean, even here in Tokyo, like I haven't been able to figure out, did we have any Canadian officials in Tokyo? And that was only like 3 years ago. So I don't see anyone sticking up their hand, but right. But if you have any of that information, I'd really like to hear it because we would like to get all this built out in a more meaningful way. So. Okay. And then looking at 3 other areas. So I'm always looking for boxing history references. And, you know, there were a few people. There's a gentleman, I apologize, I forget his name, out in BC, who'd been working really hard at putting stuff up on a blog. One of our former national team members, Dominic Filano. He's currently living just outside of Thunder Bay. He was at 2 Olympic Games with us. He's actually got a blog that's got a bunch of information on it. So I'm starting to collect all these little bits because I would love to put together a committee of people who can start sort of a very long-term project of really trying to collect all this information about Olympic style boxing in Canada in the past 100 years. We have had good conversations with the Aboriginal Sports Circle around what can we do in order to support our Indigenous population and their continued participation in boxing. We've got a great history of Indigenous participation, but when I look at any of the available stats or names or numbers, it really seems like starting in the 1990s, that sort of things started to trickle off a little bit, and I'm interested in doing what we can and making sure that we have barrier-free ability for people to participate. So certainly if you are involved in a province that has you know, more Indigenous participation, you know, someone who might be interested in helping out, I would love to hear from them. And then of course our Women in Boxing efforts have been sort of a little up and down over the past couple of years. We're looking at making another push in this area, and anyone who's interested in helping out with, I don't want to say putting together programming so much for women in boxing, but being sort of a group for whom we can go with our current plans and future plans and get a little more feedback that might be specific to making sure that we're not you know, either disadvantaging our women's participation in athlete coaching and officiating, or are we doing something that's going to be inadvertently putting up barriers to participation. So anyone who is interested in helping out with that, certainly give me an email, let me know. And I stuck on this last slide because Tommy reminded me about this yesterday. He did a great job with it, and I'm not sure that if you're going to come on and talk about it, but we are just about ready to put out a call for officials for nationals. So the officials committee will be putting out an email to each of the provincial chief officials, looking for recommendations of officials who would be ready to participate. That officials committee makes all the final selections. And just a reminder that Elite Nationals is scheduled for Sarnia at the end of November, and of course Winnipeg. And don't quote me on those dates. I actually did not even look those up on the calendar, so I'm just making a very uneducated guess there. But it will be sort of the very end of November in Winnipeg. So so we've got those two events up on the table. The one other thing that I think we should mention is if we hear that World Boxing will be putting on any sort of officials education course at the U19 World Championships happening in early November 2024 in Colorado, we will make every attempt to fill every seat available to us with Canadian officials in order to get that educational experience. Because we want, if there's going to be education happening in North America, we want to take full advantage of it. So once we've got some information on that, I'm sure the officials committee will work on putting together the possible list of officials who would be eligible to go down and participate. So okay, and that's all I've got for today. If there are any questions, I'm happy to do my best to try to provide some answers, and if not, have yourselves an excellent Thursday.